really happy to be here. It is indeed my first time in Slovenia, and having been across Europe over the years, it is indeed wonderful to be in this beautiful city. I'm going to go for a walk and looking forward to visit the bridges and the river and so on, and the city that I've heard about so much. So thanks for the invitation, and it is indeed wonderful to spend the day with you. I'm working most of my time, as was said, in the political realm of the world, with politicians, with difficult politicians who do not want to let power go, who wants to fight, and I guess most of the work my colleagues and I, and there are 4 of us, we go on invitation to places in the world where people have said, we're now tired of fighting, and we try to figure out how to create a transitional process. And then we advise them on processes. We only go on invitation. We never look for work, and believe it or not, the last 4 years we've been inundated with requests from across the world to come and assist such processes. We've been fortunate. Those of you following a bit of world politics, last week Colombia had celebrations because FARC and Colombian government, after 52 years, made peace. Was fortunate to be a little bit in that process. We're part of the Sri Lankan process over the years, and can go on with Zimbabwe and Madagascar and numerous others. So very fortunate in that regard. Doesn't make me or my colleagues special. All we do is we tell the South African story about how we've made peace, in the hope that there will be some lessons for people. And perhaps I will today tell just stories of my personal life, in the hope that there will things in there that will make a bit of sense to you. It is also unfair for me as a South African to talk about equality and talk about inclusion to some extent. But on the other hand, I do think as a South African, we can also tell what happens if you don't include and if you don't have an equal society. So on the one hand, I feel that I don't have the right to talk to you about issues such as that, but on the other hand, having experienced the bad side of that, I do think I am in the right place to share that with you. Looking around the room, you're all probably too young to remember the brutality of apartheid. And I'm going to share a little bit about that with you. South Africa became known to the rest of the world because of the shameful racial discrimination apartheid policies during the 1970s in particular, and then during the 1980s it became world known how brutal apartheid is. Thanks very much. During 1990s, South Africa became known and famous for something else, and that was the choice to start to negotiate away the brutal policies of apartheid. And all of a sudden, as South Africa was the dark side of the world, literally in 2 February 1990, a decision was made that talks can start. And for the next 10 years, South Africa became the rainbow nation, the sunshine, the darling of the world. And then this amazing person appeared on the horizon. He was there all the time, but he was 27 years in prison. The person called Nelson Mandela. Those of you who today saw, perhaps no you haven't, but you know there was the funeral today in Israel, and even Barack Obama today again referred to Nelson Mandela. He's become the icon of the world of someone who carried no hate and who could reconcile with his enemy like you cannot believe the amount of forgiveness he has shown. But as an Afrikaner, I grew up in a white community that was part of the privileged oppressor. I'm almost 60. For probably 40 years of my 35 years of my life, I was a privileged white Afrikaner, part of the racist oppressor minority, that have for more than 40 years, if not 300 years, denied black people in the country. 4 million whites, 35 million black people. 4 million whites denied black people in the country of their own birth the right to participate in any political statements or systems, denied them the right of ownership. As a black person, you could not own a piece of land or your own house. The right to participate in a healthcare system or to be part of an education system. It was denied for them to even run a little business. As a black person in South Africa, the country of your birth, none of those rights. We as whites, we had all of that. We had a fantastic education system. We had a fantastic economic wealth. South Africa is the country with the most gold and diamonds in the world. Russia tries to catch up over the years and a few other places, but De Beers comes from South Africa. Kimberley, South Africa, the diamond in the Queen's of England's crown. Cullinan diamond from South Africa. So we're this wealthy country. Can you imagine how white people in South Africa had a great time with black people at the bottom of the barrel? In short, we denied them freedom, we denied them dignity, we denied them rights. Any chance to live as equals in an equal society was totally denied to black people for so many years. I've been asked to talk a little bit about my own experience today, and I'm going to share with you some of the views of that era and how, as whites, we were living in this almost perfect privileged world. I want to repeat that, in an almost perfect privileged world. And I want you to make the link to yourself too, as Europeans or even as Slovenians. Privileged world, and the challenges and decisions I was confronted during the 1980s as a young Afrikaner. I want to share that with you, because as a young Afrikaner sitting in my heaven of niceness, I had choices, and I want to share that with you. Sharing these personal stories, I want to put it very strong to you that it is for no moment do I try to say that I've done anything special. Absolutely not. And by rejecting my white power, I secondly want to be clear that there's no comparison between the sacrifices I had to make because of giving up my power, if one can call that giving up power. It is small in comparison with the sacrifices and suffering of millions of South African black people, which had no choice about power at any time. Let me put my cards on the table. I'm sharing this story in the hope that there will be a positive message for you as Slovenian citizens, as well as for you as young youth leaders, and many people are looking up to you, and as young youth workers, particular, that you will be alert and aware of the dangers of keeping your silence, of staying quiet, and of sitting back and absorb the privileges and comfort of your life in the face of injustices out there, in the face of suffering, of those strangers knocking at your door and knocking at the door of your society and of your communities. I'm saying again, I am pleading with you to not keep your silence and not sitting back in your comfort. Whoever those are that are knocking at your door and the door of your life and your society and your communities, are they people that are of different religion? Are they refugees? Are they minorities? Are they Roma? Are they the LGTB? Are they people that are on the edges of society? You have the responsibility to think long and hard about your responsibility and role as a citizen. Having grown up in a wonderful, caring Christian home as a middle-class boy, I had no sense at all during the first 20 years of my life of the suffering and injustices against my fellow countrymen and women. My government, I had no clue about the apartheid laws. I was totally ideologically blind. I, at the age of 20, did not know about a person like Mandela in prison. At the age of 20 years old, I did not know of a person called Steve Biko who was killed in our prisons. I did not know about the suffering of black people out there. There were lots of black people around me. Don't think for a minute that I haven't seen black people. There were lots of black people around me. But black people in our society were like shadows. They're not real. They were shadows. They were the housemaid and the garden boy, even though they were twice my age. And they were just there to service me, to service us as white community. No families. I had no idea of any of the black people who served, who changed my nappies, who washed my clothes, who made my sandwiches to go to school every day, who carried me on their back, I had no idea what their surnames were, had no idea if they had families or children themselves, because I had power, and they were at. I'm saying that this was the general way white South Africans lived in our society. For me, they were like shadows. They could come into our houses in the morning and leave in the afternoons, taking care of every single need in our home during the day, back to who knows where, into the shadows again, behind the wheel, behind the hill, out of sight, out of mind. That was why apartheid was so successful. It was probably one of the most successful ideological implementations of any political system ever in history. The idea of apartheid, for those of you that are a little younger, or no, probably all of you, the idea of apartheid was that here is South Africa, beautiful country, huge country, with 45 million people, 4 million white people. The idea was that these beautiful cities, where the gold and diamonds and wealth and beautiful agriculture land was, that will stay in the hands of white people, and that black people will be moved out of our society to what is called townships around our towns and cities, and from there they will be moved to homelands. The whole idea of the theology that said God created nations. So we're going to take all the Zulus throughout South Africa, we're going to move them to a Bantustan, to a little homeland called Zululand. And then apartheid said, we'll take all the Sothos and we'll take them to Bophuthatswana, and we'll take all the Vendas, and we'll take 8 or 9 such countries in South Africa, but small little pieces of rubbish. The idea was, let's move them, put them in townships, transitional camps, I call it today, on the way to these homelands. You know, apartheid was a process. So you'll get them out of sight behind the hill first, just there behind the hill in a little township where you build little matchbox homes, temporary, no facilities, no tar roads, no electricity, no sewage, just a bit of water, and you then make it official policy of government as uncomfortable as possible for people, so that they will want to move to their homelands, to their allocated homelands. That was what apartheid was. When you hear the word apartheid, separateness, it means that's what was the ideology behind it. And so that was the idea. Let me share 3 awakening moments with you that of my own life that pulled me out of this comfort world of white privilege, of white middle-class life, often blinding light of ideology. out of the comfort, out of my fear, out of my proudness, out of my power. Those things that prevent me from seeing the right from wrong. 3 moments that I choose not to ignore, but listen to the call towards the awakening towards justice. And again, I'm telling you these 3 stories, and my 3 friends from who sat with me in Finland, you've heard all 3 stories last week. But these 3 stories, there are numerous such stories in my own life, but that shook me and said, either you can stay a white privileged person and live a fantastic life, can go and make money and do what people do. Or you can make a choice for justice, can make a choice for what is right. And so these 3 things, I want to tell the 3 stories. The first one is I was a ticket person on a suburban train during my 2nd year as a student, 21 years old. And I would take the tickets for people who are commuting with the train. So in the mornings, 4 o'clock, I'll get up, get on a suburban train, go out to the township called Soshanguve, pick up there 4:30 in the morning, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people on the morning train to come into the city of Pretoria, 30 minutes train ride, 35 minutes. From here, they change trains and they go to Johannesburg to be 6 o'clock in the morning in Johannesburg, to go and work in these wonderful mines that brings wealth to me and my color. And then this afternoon, 6 o'clock, they will leave Johannesburg. They're 7 o'clock in Pretoria. We'll catch them at 7, take them onto the train. 8 o'clock, drop them back at Soshanguve. Old men and women, tired, sit in the trains, cannot keep their eyes open, having slogged it out all day for minimum salary and minimum income. And then they walk another 15 minutes or half an hour to this God-forsaken land or house that they have. And for the first time in my life, as a 21-year-old, I said, my God, what have we done in this country? For the first time, these people were people. For the first time, those that were shadows became real to me. I saw families, I saw mothers and fathers, I saw suffering. And it shook me. And I could have ignored, like many of my other young students who were making money during holidays so that we can pay our studies and just work on the trains. But thank God I was challenged to my bone to say, I've got to make a choice here. And I think something awakened in me. And I hope that you have in your life moments like that too. A second story. In 1985, I went to the US to study there some degree. And at that time now, I'm an awakened person. I'm kind of little liberal. I kind of have a view of what's going on in South Africa. But at that stage, South Africa was a state of emergency. Military vehicles on all the townships, right through the country. Fire and burning. Tanks. Army, permanent presence in the townships to keep the black people under control, that they don't riot against white assets. While studying, I would go every day in Louisville, Kentucky, of all places. I would go into the class in university every day in a multiracial environment. By the way, Louisville, Kentucky, Muhammad Ali comes from Louisville, Kentucky. And would go into the class and sit amongst black and white people. And in my first 3-4 months of the year, trying to explain when people ask me about South Africa. That time South Africa was on the news quite a bit. And I explained, languages and tribes. And, you try all kinds of ways to explain injustice. And then one night on CBS, CNN, all the ABC, all the American networks, a picture was shown, a slot was shown where a South African government railway vehicle actually drove up and down in a township in the main street, in Athlone, the township down in Cape Town, up and down. And after the 3rd or the 4th time, young black guys started to pick up bricks and stones, and they threw it at this government vehicle. And it wasn't 2 minutes, 3 minutes later, 15 big white Afrikaner men jumped out with automatic rifles, and they just started to shoot randomly. Boys of 10, 11, 13, 14 years old, and they killed more than 20. Called the Trojan Horse event. And the next morning I walked into that class, and it was dead silence. And everyone was looking at me and said, so how do you now explain your tribes and this and that? And I must say it was one of those important moments in your life where you say, now I cannot only say, okay, I'm going to not associate with what is wrong anymore. The challenge of saying, do I now stand up and do something about it? And that was the second, I think, moment of challenge. Again, I'm calling on moments of awakening for us as members of this world. So the third event happened in Pretoria. I got back the next year. I worked in a company in a shopping mall in Pretoria, a big shopping mall. Now, by this time, everyone, all the whiteys I work with, they know Ivor is this, he knows black people, and he's, he mixes with them, and all those. And in front of our shop, or in front of our company's door, on the third or fourth floor of the mall, a black man had a heart attack, and people started to gather around him, no one actually doing anything. And someone ran into my office, one of my colleagues, thinking, well, Ivor. So I went and I tried to do mouth-to-mouth resuscitation with this man. And for probably half an hour, tried to bring this old man back to life. And he died in my arms. And it was a shocking experience, my first time that I actually experienced death that close, and here was death of someone I really wanted to save this person's life. And I went back into my office, and the next half hour, 3, 4, 10 of my colleagues walked into the office, shook my hand and said, congratulations, Ivor. And I said, no, anyone would have done this, and that was kind of my response. After the third or fourth person, I realized that's not why they say congratulations. They are saying congratulations and thank you that you were willing to put your mouth on the mouth of a black person, because we weren't. And for me, that was the moment of making that last step in saying, if in moments of life and death, people cannot break through their racism, then we're in trouble as a world, we're in trouble as a society. And that pushed my wife and me literally from saying we are now have no choice but to become activists and in our life. So let me say, white South Africans, we were always in the camp of the haves. We had choices. We had opportunities. And we could pick if we want to be on the side of the power or on the powerless. It was within our choice. If we want to be on the side of injustice or on the side of justice. If we want to be on the side of the rich or on the side of the poor. If we want to be on the side of the oppressor or of the oppressed. Victims, those on the trains, those guys who died in my arms, those boys who threw the bricks, no choice. Victims do not have a choice. They have no power. We have the power. Today, my white friends say to me, Ivor, but we never knew. I mean, we didn't know. We never realized that was how brutal apartheid was. I wish I was told. Honestly, we as white South Africans didn't want to know. We didn't want to know. Europe, as you know well, is currently experiencing the significant crisis of thousands of refugees doing everything to seek a better life. People from all races and religions from countries are in severe distress, desperate to find a future. You in Slovenia have the power and have the choice to make decisions. And I plead with you as young people to think about those decisions and those choices. Can I call on you again as future leaders of this amazing and beautiful country, that you do not keep silent and sit and be absorbed by your privileges and comfort. In fact, in the face of injustice and suffering, of those strangers knocking at your door and the door of your society and your community, but that you are bold and humane in your action towards the powerless in your society. I am about to end, but I was asked to say something about inclusion as well, and so I'm just going to add one little story about inclusion. When our beloved President Nelson Mandela in 1990, we had on the one side the National Party, the White National Party under de Klerk, and we had the African National Congress, the ANC, and the Mandela. When the first meeting took place between the ANC and the government, the National Party, everyone around the table said, well, we, the National Party and the ANC, we can solve the South African problem. We can sit a month, a year, and we fix this, we write a new constitution, everything is fine. Mandela said no. He said, go back and bring others, include others around this table. And so his ANC negotiators went back, and then they said, well, we'll bring in the South African Communist Party, and we bring in CUSATU, the unions, and we bring in the church and so on. We'll bring in those that we know is on our side to the table. And the National Party guys went back and they brought in the Conservative Party, and they brought in the Democratic Party, the whiteys that looked like them. And so they all came back to the table. This time there were 6 or 8 or 10 parties around the table. And Mandela looked at it for the next negotiations and he said, didn't I tell you to bring everyone in that needs to be here? We wanted an inclusive process. And they were saying, but Mr. Mandela, everyone, we're all here. And he said, no, go back and think about this. People went back, ANC, National Party, and their extensions went back. And Mandela said to them, they came and asked him, but Mr. Mandela, who should be here? We thought everyone is here. He says, so where are the homeland ministers, the homeland presidents? Those things I have laid my life for, what the ANC fought for 40, 50 years, thousands of people killed to crash the homeland, the apartheid system. Mandela said, go and fetch, it was called the Buthelezis, the Mangopes. And he said, in other words, the black sellouts, those who bought the apartheid system, the black people who bought into the apartheid system. He said, go and get them, bring them also here. And he said to the National Party and the whiteys, go and get the militant far right-wing, racist, fascists, go and get them, the Eugene ter Blances and the General Constant Viljoen and his right-wing people too. He says, I want everyone around the table. 28 people sat for 2 years. 28 people sat for 2 years. 28 parties sat for 2 years and negotiated the South African peace process, because he said, you cannot talk to your friends only. We need our enemies here. We need everyone here. And the reason for that is, he says, so that the day we sign our new constitution, that those right-wing fascists and those sellout blacks, that none of them can in 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 years turn around and say, we haven't been part of the process. We haven't signed. He says, I want them all to sign. I'm telling you, I know it's a radical story. It doesn't necessarily mean much for you in your local context, but the point I want to make is inclusion, 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 because inclusion brings ownership. And if you can bring ownership, it means everyone takes ownership of the mess or everyone takes ownership of the solution. Let me read the last line for you. Tell me about your pain, and I will hear. Show me your suffering, and I will believe. Let me climb into your shoes, and let me experience your struggle. Let me climb into your shoes. Think of those you work with, and let me experience your struggle. Then I will understand. Then I will understand. Thank you very much. I'm done. Thanks. I'm open for questions, and I'll try my best to respond, because I know there's going to be very difficult questions, I'm sure. Please, any questions? Is it just for clarification, or is it? It will be hard for me to make the jump to your work, but feel free to if you think there's some word or two on that as well. Otherwise, we go home, and I'm going to watch your beautiful city. Yeah.
The situation like that you describe, it's so severe. It's been not just decades, but centuries building up. So you come to a point that people are literally getting killed in masses on the street, and you have international media attention all of a sudden after blockades and so on.
Yeah.
So, we have situations like this in the world.
Yeah.
But when we look at our local reality, I don't see the same kind of pressure or urgency in the society when it comes to the situation of local Roma communities, or when it comes to situation even with the refugees that we're going through Slovenia. And so as we are not at that point, how do you get to the point of actually really making for people conscious that they cannot, and they not just should not, but they cannot opt out and actually
just take the soft road.
And that every action, even if it is not refusing CPR to someone, but if it is refusing to sit in the school at the same table with someone you don't like because of the categories, that is just as well not okay. And how do you deal on that level with it?
Yeah. I think it is at the end of, you can, through a system, change people only that much, through laws, through rules, through quotas. You can, with a system, only bring so much change. At the end of the day, it has to do with how does an individual get switched on and get turned around. And I think, and that's probably the only message I wanted to send here. I don't expect you to go out there and throw stones or do things like that, or look for opportunities to do things just. I was calling on your sense of life purpose, to ask, whatever that small injustice is around me, is it in a train where someone pushes someone? Is it a bullying situation? My call is we need to become people that are sensitive for the underdog, sensitive for because no one else is going to look at them, because of our own power. Sometimes we might also be the underdog, and sometimes we might need someone else to assist us. So I don't ask for I think most situations don't ask for activist reaction. I think it just asks us to say, how do I live my life that is fair? How do I live my life and understand that I have power, rather than just thinking I'm also, I'm just. We had this great discussion the other day. Andres might even want to jump in here about, white privilege, and he was arguing strongly that there isn't such a thing as white privilege in your society. But we said what there is is power privilege. And perhaps that's the point I want to make. There's power privilege, which you had a good education most probably. Hey, 90% of the world don't have good education. You have a roof over your head. 50% of the world doesn't have a roof over their head, or more. So I'm just saying we need to understand that even though you might feel sometimes powerless, or you might feel, gee, life is against me, or it's unfair. That's true. We all feel like that so often, being done in. All I'm saying is understand that just if a person from a rural South Africa, and there are 10, 15 million people, look at you today, you have no idea how they will put you there and how they will feel they're here. And so our quest in life is, I think, how do we try to just bring a fairer in society? I know I sound like a preacher here, but I'm calling on that part of your existence. And so, and in real life every day, you got to figure that out. I don't think there's a single answer for that. And we have personalities, and we have aggression, and that's okay. I'm not saying we shouldn't be who we are. I'm just saying, don't forget that you we have choices to make. In South Africa, a little story. We employed a few years back a guy, a young black guy in our office, and the assumption was he will know how to switch a plug, put electrical things in the plug. He will know how to change a car tire. He will know even how to work a spit or whatever in the garden. So it was a maintenance job, which we gave to, and then realized how a system has disempowered the person, that he could not even do those basic. Right, there's nothing wrong with his intelligence. It's just, and for me, I don't think twice. For me, it's almost if you're born with those things, because I grew up with all those wonderful opportunities. So I'm just trying to say, let's be a little aware about those nice things that we actually can do.
And it actually shocked me when you said that black people in your society were as shadows in your communities. Yeah, not shocked. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and I'm thinking, how many shadows are there in my community that I don't see? Yeah. And how many shadows are there also when you are working and you don't see them as youth workers? I'm not saying, I'm just thinking about it. Yeah, do we actually see what is actually happening, and do we know? I have a privilege to try to volunteer to teach one refugee guy, really young guy, and only with that I understand how difficult it is for them when they came to Slovenia. Yeah? And exactly what Mr. said behind, something is integration and something is inclusion. Yeah? And I don't think, and this is for challenging us, that we are really inclusive society. Yeah? We are trying, and we are working really, really hard. I'm not saying here in this that we are not, in general. Yeah? Something is integration, but when I'm talking with this, or not, I don't talk with him because he doesn't speak Slovenian or English, and we are trying to teach him English. So you know how that goes, basically with hands, and then when he says that he came here and he's in the shelter, or however it's called, azilni dom, thank you. And that's that for him, nothing else. 18 euros per month he gets, not 800 that was in the public. And when I'm now thinking his situation and me as a privileged white guy, and I think I am, honestly, And then I'm thinking how many shadows were there in my community in Terbole when I was still working and I didn't see them, and they still are. Yeah. So I think this is a good thing, and thank you for this challenge. It really challenged me, and I will keep it in mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
May I ask you how your parents react on your...
Yeah, parents are fantastic things. Yeah, they really are. They are, you know, it is how parents back their children. I was blessed to have parents who backed me. I mean, even though they would disagree with me, they would perhaps say, Ivor, be careful, or this or that, but they backed me even in the face of their whole friendship circle, who was very blatantly call me names, but they yeah. And what is wonderful is after our liberation in 1994, how they could smile and say, "Yeah, my son was right," you know. So they had their moment. They didn't say that, but I could see they were saying, you know, yeah. So you know, that I honor them for that, and we had very difficult times later, and I don't want to bore you with it. There was a time an assassination on my life, and how I went on a public forum and said, this is the South African police, the National Party police trying to do that. And not, you know, who they try to say it was some far right-wing lot, but it was orchestrated by government. And I mean, that was really putting my parents, you know, it was so hard for them. And then later at the TRC, our Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where someone came and acknowledged that someone from the police, that they have tried to do that. And so again, my parents could say, you know, that was so you know, it, they were great. Yeah. Okay, guys, this is it. This is it. Yes, let's stop. Thanks. Thank you so much.